And I think the heart of the question is, why do you do what you do? Why do you still do what you do? Why do you still quote work so hard? I'll give an answer that people will not like, but I took a year off in 2021 and basically didn't work. And what's interesting about that year is that it was one of the most depressed years of my life. But looking back on the year, so I remember it differently than I experienced it. And so the thing with memory is that it's tricky because it doesn't actually like work like a computer. You selectively remember the good things and you don't remember the bad. And so what's interesting about reward and punishment is that punishment fades, reward sticks. So for example, like the reason that the morning after you're hungover, you're like, I'm never going to drink again. And then 7 days later, you're out of the bar, so you're drinking again. It's because the punishment of the drinking fades, but the reward stays the same. And it works across everything. So the reason that you break up with a girlfriend and then a few months later you're like missing her is because the reward is still there. And the pain associated with the person fades. And so this is why like some people like so many long and continue these cycles of getting back together and breaking up, getting back together and breaking up, is because one of these sticks and the other one basically renews and then disappears, then renews and disappears. And so if you want to continually punish someone, on the flip side, you have to vary the intensity and style of punishment so that it stays novel. Otherwise they habituate. Weird, right? And so to go back to the original question, was like, why do you do what you do? I don't think anyone can really answer the question in general. I think people can create a narrative. Like I could tell you a story, my dad didn't hug me enough, or there's this big pie in the sky thing that I really want to accomplish and I think humanity needs it. Like these are all really compelling narratives and they've been repeated a lot of times. I think they're just answers to questions. I don't know if they're actually reality. And so when I think about that, it's like, I behave this way because I've been rewarded for behaving this way. And to close the loop on that year that I took off, I have had days that I have good days and I have days that I have bad days. And I have suffered during the year that I was off, and I have suffered during the years that I work a lot. And so my objective experience hasn't really dramatically changed year to year. I think it's slightly improved, more so because of my basically just skills have improved in terms of like how I can reframe reality. That's gotten a lot better. But by and large, like if all of our experience is how we choose to perceive the world, then like it's all in our heads anyways. And so it's like really just trying to flex that muscle more over time. And so why do I do what I do now? Because what else would I do? And if I did something different, I'd probably enjoy it about the same anyways. And so it's like, I would say that right now I seek stimulation probably above everything else. And so there's few things that stimulate me more than the work that I do. I have a note on my wall of like the 3 activities that I enjoy most in life, which I think is a really good activity for anybody. 2 activities that I've done lately the first one I've done for a long time. The second one I did lately. The first one was, I had this boss. I've told this story before, but it was meaningful for me. So I had this boss, first boss, second boss. Well, first adult boss I had. And I had some good weekend. And I came back and she was like, you seem happy. And she said, you must have had a good weekend. And I was like, yeah, I did. And she said, I'm pretty sure the secret to happiness is living as many days in a row like that as you can. And it was actually a pretty operationalized definition for me. I was like, I can do that. Like, what is one day that I like? How do I live that day as many times in a row as I can? And that's actually been a pretty, like, probably the most operationalized way of trying to live my life that I still do to this day. And the thing is that I think that day can change. And so what are the components of that day? And I'll bet you the things that I wanted to do as my perfect day when I was 20 are different than what they are at 36, and they'll be different when I'm at 56. And so doing that exercise of what is the perfect day for me now, and then how can I maximize the likelihood that I live that day over and over and over again? And I think that has been a really, really powerful recipe for me for quote happiness. The second frame that's been really helpful for me in terms of reframing suffering has been a couple things, but I'll give you 2 frames. One is when things are really good in business, I'm typically suffering because growth pains are painful. If things are plateauing, I'm usually suffering because plateaus are painful because you don't know, like, why are we stagnating? What's going on? And if you're declining, it's really painful. And so it's just like life is painful. And so pain in of itself is not an indication that there's something wrong. Suffering is not an indication that there's something wrong. It's just feedback. It's a signal. And so that's been helpful for me. The second is I actually ranked basically all my adult years. So I say post-college, all the years that I've lived. I actually just force ranked them. I was like, what was my best year objectively? And so what's interesting is that I have a really good upward curve, but I definitely have local minimums. And so like 2025 for me, I think is a local minimum. It's probably been the worst year I've had. I think in the last, I could look it up, but I think it's about the last 7 or 8 years, probably the worst year I've had so far. Yeah. But in 2024 is my best year of all time. So really, but here's where it's interesting, is that this, 2025 so far has been the worst year of the last 8 years, but the 5th worst of the last 13. And so even though it's what feels like a terrible year for me now, it's still way better than 2013 was. And it's way better than 2016. Those were terrible years. And when I look at them objectively, I kind of laugh like the way I am right now. I'm like, yeah, those were bad. Right? And so it's like, it's weird because I can almost like derive joy from like, this is bad, but it's not as bad as it has been. And so I'm like, well, obviously I'll survive. And so the idea of like, man, I can't stand it anymore. Well, it's like, well, you can stand it or you'll die. And if you die, you won't have to. And so the default of all humans is standing it until you don't have to, which I think makes suffering easier to deal with. But I think one of the greatest sources of suffering is thinking that suffering is a problem. It's that there's something wrong with you for suffering. And the same thing applies to, anxiety. Like, man, why am I anxious? Why am I stressed? It's like, you're alive. That's all that means. Because in all settings, you're going to have stress. In good settings, you have growth stress, you have stagnation stress, you have decline stress. All of them suck. But you also have good things at all of those times. So, life is life.